Okay, and we're back. So that was... God, I was just looking at... That was Danger Falling Pianos by Mischief Brew, even, which is a very good folk punk band. It's unfortunately not really a thing right now, but... Yeah, I actually don't know that much about this situation. It's just unfortunate. I think somebody died. And that sucks. But I'm here with the good comrade, Ben... The good local leftist wizard.
Howdy, howdy, howdy.
Howdy, howdy, howdy. And we're just gonna, shoot the shit. I mean, I'm not supposed to swear on here, but we're just gonna shoot the shit, and...
We're gonna shoot the stuff.
Shoot the stuff,
Yeah.
bang, bang, and talk about some current events, and get a little silly, because I like to be silly, personally. I'm a very silly lady. So... Have you found it yet?
So I did find the tweet thread. However, it has been deleted.
What?
Yeah.
Ugh! Okay, so what was this?
Okay, well, I will try to remember it as best I can without infringing on the details too much. And the accuracy of Twitter threads is probably not something to rely on normally, and so I would caution everyone on the other side of this program that what you are receiving is my half-boiled and brain-melted distilled version of a Twitter thread. Caution advised. However, Bernie Sanders was in a town hall on CNN recently. CNN has been doing town hall series on for almost everyone who is declared to run for president. They have a donation threshold. I don't remember what it is to go on air. But Bernie obviously, X blew it out of the water.
Of course,
he's way ahead. But there was something where everyone or almost everyone who asked him a question that night was either a DNC or DCCC staffer, or was otherwise running or currently elected to office as the Democratic Party. And there have been some allegations that, considering where they were from, the questions that they were asking Bernie may have been hit questions.
Yeah.
They were a lot more pointed than they seem to have been at the other candidates, i.e. Kamala Harris, for example. I believe that there was one question that was directly asking Bernie about what would he do for African Americans and what would he do to bring about reparations for slavery.
Interesting.
Which I think that is a ridiculously loaded question.
Yeah, of course.
Because obviously I think that Bernie would be in favor of some sort of reparations for slavery. However, it's almost impossible to approach that issue because any solution
that's so massive.
Exactly. To truly do justice to reparations would be
there's really
a
nothing.
Program, exactly, and it would just absolutely incense the right and probably incense many liberals as well. And then on the other hand, if you can't answer that question with a definitive and resounding yes, you seem as though you're downplaying and minimalizing the issue, which I don't think is something anyone wants. There was another hit piece question that was, it was from a centrist who was, or someone who claimed to be a centrist and was asking how she could feel accurately represented given Bernie's extreme views. And this comes back to, to something else that really irritates me, which is this policy of centrism, or what people call centrist positions, as if that was actually what the majority of Americans are looking for. People seem to think that just because there is, 40% of people that maybe vote Democrat or think democratically, and 40% of people that think Republican or perhaps fascistically.
Oh,
Got him, zing!
Got him, zing!
That, naturally, with those two being on the extreme poles, that most people are in the center. But I don't think that's true. Now, it maybe was true in the years of Nixon, or perhaps vaguely in the years of Clinton.
It's just not really a
but
thing
even
now.
In the 90s, I consider that to really be more of an excuse for the Democrat Party to jump to the right than anything else. And nowadays, it's not true at all. I mean, all we hear constantly is about polarization. But, we still hear people like Michael Bloomberg's positions referred to as centrist, despite the fact that majority of Americans nowhere close to support those positions. If you would look at what the majority of Americans actually support, i.e. what is the center, you would find those policies line up much closer with that of Bernie Sanders.
Exactly. Wow. You know your numbers. You know statistics.
I know my numbers fairly well. I think that considering all of the different substances that I've used to burn holes in my brain, I'm able to do a decent job.
It's really a miracle.
Yeah.
But I was actually just, because I haven't looked into any of this CNN stuff, but I was actually just Googling, okay, what's the first thing that comes up when you're Bernie Sanders CNN town hall? First two articles, Fox News, Breitbart.
We love that Breitbart comes up on Google searches in 2019 still.
Literally the third option.
Yeah.
Oh my god.
I think I saw that Google had started to backtrack on their YouTube algorithm because they admitted that it literally was funneling the youth into extremely right-wing content.
Yeah.
But they still
subtly.
really do nothing for their Google searches. And then we could make a larger argument about Capital being comfortable with, the far right and fascism because it does not threaten them.
Well, yeah, we've already vaguely talked about that here.
Yes, on this incredible, excellent program.
Oh, wow, don't stroke it too hard.
Don't tempt me.
Whoa! I'll have to cut that in post.
No, but,
Yeah.
me and Nova here, we are both anarchists.
Yes, of course.
We both read Marxists still, which I think is the sign of
a principled anarchist.
A principled anarchist.
We get angry a lot.
Yes, we get angry a lot, as I think anyone living in 2019 should.
That's the fucking truth. Oops,
yes.
Can't say that.
I like that I'm having an easier job with this than you are.
Whatever!
I feel like I curse more on the whole.
I don't know. I'm definitely a foul-mouthed little lady.
Perhaps you do it with more regularity, but when I do it, it all comes out in big bunches.
That's true. That's
I
true.
go on tirades. Yeah.
A shotgun blast of the F.
But no, okay. So
yes,
me and Nova both being anarchists.
Yes.
We don't believe that any significant change can come about through electoralism.
Yeah.
That is not a way to achieve our goals.
No, I'm
It
not
is not possible to overthrow capitalism in this way. And this is because capitalism and the state are tightly coupled. And one cannot remove the state through electoral action. There's no real way to disentangle the two. And any situation, you would have to be a hypothetical where an extremely far-left political party was able to sweep a vast majority of the offices.
Exactly.
I doubt that many of our viewers are familiar with Mexican politics, but very recently there was a massive social democratic wave of electoral victory in Mexico that brought in Emmanuel Lopez Obrador, or AMLO, as he's often referred to in English-speaking publications.
Cool.
And his party, which I cannot remember the name of right now, but it is something to the effect of the People's Party or Party of New Prosperity or something like that. And they are mostly social democrats, but they've been bringing forward policies that are largely aimed at, cutting out corruption and then redistributing wealth.
Sure.
And, so that is what you would want to look like
of course.
if perhaps a movement like that, but then would go several steps further.
Yeah.
However, once you would get into that point,
mm-hmm.
you would immediately be threatened with a coup.
Yeah.
Which is really where the organs of the state come back
American aid
against you. Yeah. So I'm going to touch on some Marx that I've been reading that is relevant to
please.
this. Yeah, and then we're going to bounce back to Bernie Sanders. I will tie it all together.
I love that you've come in with your own. I know exactly what I'm saying.
Oh, actually, this is all off the top of my head.
Oh, I love that too.
Yeah.
Hell yes.
Yeah. We'll see if my actual planned out, structured thinking and content is any better. I'm working on that right now.
Cool.
The plan is.
Are you still making YouTube videos?
I am still making YouTube videos.
Not to plug.
I'm doing it very slowly because I've been very poor and working a lot and trying to make money, and it's hard to do both of those at the same time. But my YouTube channel is Bluegrass Red. Don't look at it until after April because right now the videos are terrible. I'm going to be uploading 4 at a time and then hopefully doing 1 a month afterwards. But I've also kind of given up on trying to stick to a steady schedule because I've realized with my emotional instability and heavy workload, it's almost impossible to do. And beating myself up over it does no good.
God, that's so mentally healthy.
Let's go back to Marx again.
Please.
And we'll talk Mexico and we'll talk Bernie. And we'll talk a little Europe, too.
Hell yes.
But, so the Marx piece that I'm reading, I have actually checked out from our lovely Steely library.
Wow,
which I will now plug.
Plug! Sponsor us.
Most of us who go to school here don't know this, but our library has an excellent collection of leftist texts.
That is true.
Including one that I've been going through lately, which is a 50-volume set of the entire completed works of Marx and Engels.
You'll love to see
printed in 1978 in the Union of Socialist Soviet Republics.
Yeah.
For English language publication, i.e., this is something that was printed by the USSR for Americans, the British, everybody who speaks English to read.
Yeah,
and we have it in Steely.
And even on that, it's really cool because Snell has a book that I think he got from a library. Is
it your copy of State and Revolution?
Yes.
That you got? Yes.
Yeah, that's printed in the People's Republic of China, and it's just
the State and Rev is a PRC publication. That's great. It's actually the same copy of State and Rev that I read too.
Really?
Yeah. So
it's so cool.
It's bouncing around.
Hell yes.
But anyways, so the text that I'm going through is called The 18th Lumiere of Napoleon Bonaparte, and it has some really great quotes, which I'm going to try to pull up here while I talk, which is very hard to do.
Well, yeah. We're filling the space now. How's everybody doing? Feeling really good. I should do ASMR too. Would you pay me for this?
ASMR could be really fun for both of us.
ASMR.
We could do it together.
Communist ASMR.
Anarchist, communist, ASMR. You wake up in the morning, go to work.
You burn.
You hate it.
It's horrible.
Your job, it sucks.
It sucks.
Your boss, he tells you to do things.
Oh, I don't want to do that.
You don't want to do those things.
Oh,
Why
for
does
what? $7.25?
nothing for
God.
pennies?
God.
And you're doing things that he wants you to do,
Exactly.
not the things you want to do.
You don't even want to do that.
Just consider in every moment that you spend that you are a creature unlike every other one on this earth, and that humanity, we have something that other animals, besides perhaps birds, don't have access to, which is an almost infinite and frightening freedom. In any moment, you could take your life in a radical different direction.
That's a good point.
You could take all the money you have in your wallet and take a bus to Mexico.
Wow, you could.
You could live on the street and learn to speak Spanish.
Yeah.
You could jump off a building.
Whoa.
You could drive your car all the way to the other side of the country.
Yeah, if you really wanted to.
But instead, we get up every day and we do the same
Go
routine
to work.
because we're trapped in a system,
Wow.
a society.
Wow.
Bottom text.
Marx. Alienation.
All right. So the 18th premiere of Louis Bonaparte is
Yes.
a rather
Please.
thick text, sort of written like poetry. And it
She thick.
regards Marx's involvement in the European revolutions of 1848.
Okay.
Now, this is something that I feel like is not really skipped over in history classes. I think we covered a little bit in the AP Euro.
Yeah.
But even still, it was a highly climactic event that had a major influence
Okay.
on culture, but achieved very little actual results. So what happens basically is in 1848,
Okay.
there had been a socialist movement building all throughout Europe,
Okay.
a popular working class movement.
Cool. You'll
This
love
is
to see it.
as Europe is starting to industrialize.
Yeah.
However, it's also still mostly ruled by these absolute monarchies.
Okay.
So, they don't even have the liberal democracy like occurs in the United States. So you
Mhm.
have primarily both agitators and revolutionaries advocating for a liberal
Mhm.
democratic government,
Yeah.
kind of like what we have today, and then also a working class advocating for a socialist proletarian government.
Okay.
Now, Karl Marx, in the spring of 1848, publishes the Communist Manifesto.
Cool.
He does this in January or something like that.
You love to
It's
see it.
only, and he speaks, of course, of the specter haunting Europe out
Yes.
of communism. It's only 2 or 3 months later
Mhm.
that the revolution of 1848 breaks out across Europe. It happens in France. It happens in all the German and Prussian states.
Okay.
It happens in Italy. It happens in Denmark. All of these countries, their major cities, erect barricades, and
Hell
they
yeah.
construct provisional liberal democratic governments,
Yeah.
many of which exist for only a short amount of time. And this seems to validate kind of what Marx is saying, I mean, he sort of called it, right?
Yeah.
But what happens here, unfortunately, is that all of these revolutions fail. They
Oh.
are crushed.
Okay.
There's very little actual direct political resounding from them. However, there is a massive socio-cultural response to it.
Mhm.
Think of it sort of like Occupy Wall Street, only which happened across the whole of Europe.
Well, yeah.
People rise up, they try to create new forms of government, try to demonstrate differently, although the 1848 revolutions were much more constructed than Occupy. Occupy was just kind of an expression of discontent. This was an actual
a
revolution,
little
but
more hard and
a
fast.
failed one, and it failed for a number of reasons, and that's really what this text is about here.
Like an analysis of why it
Correct.
failed.
Yes, it's an
Okay.
analysis of why it failed. Marx goes, and he talks mostly about France.
Okay.
And here, to give you a quick rundown of what happens here.
Mhm.
So in the 1848 revolution, we have multiple forces coming together to kind of overthrow. The army kind of abides
Okay.
and lets it happen, and then there's a new liberal reform that's put into office.
Yeah.
And this is a coalition, really, between 4 factions.
Okay.
We have the proletarian working class socialist movement that Marx
Cool.
is a part of, and then we have the liberal revolutionaries who are not trying to bring about a socialist system, but really the revolutionary bourgeoisie,
Yeah.
right? And then we have 2 factions of royalists, that those of the who would follow the court of Orléans,
Mhm.
which largely represented the landed property interests. They had had a king for a while, and then he got deposed. And the other one would be the Bourbon family, who were also royalists, but that royal line was mostly supported by the traditional kind of high, fancy French aristocracy, finance, and the lawyers.
Right.
And the clergy also, I should probably mention this because that's important in France,
Yeah.
they supported the Bourbons as well.
Interesting.
So,
okay.
What happens is eventually the liberal revolutionaries decide to side with the royalists to form a coalition together against the proletarian working class part of this. And what that basically causes over the long term is a defanging of everything that the revolution brought together until we get to the year 1852, when the current acting president, who was the first actually popularly elected president, and he was the nephew of the original Napoleon Bonaparte. His name was Louis Bonaparte.
Ooh.
He was acting president during this period under this liberal revolution. After his term ends in 1852, he stages a coup, declares himself emperor, and that's the end of that, pretty much. They construct a new constitutional assembly, but it's mostly controlled by his party insiders, and he rules until 1870, when he's killed by the Prussians in the Franco-Prussian War.
Well.
Yeah. Also, after the Franco-Prussian War ends in failure and he is deposed, that is when we get the Paris Commune, which is the first semi-successful socialist revolution in history, and another one that Marx participated in. So it sort of bookends. But what Marx talks about here is basically how the state will backstop any attempt at fundamental change in society, and how the different class organs in society will come together to reinforce those. And that's why, in many ways, when we see these social democratic revolutions happen, and I can draw an allusion to Salvador Allende's Chile here. And also, Mohammad Mossadegh's Iran, who I'm not sure our viewers are familiar with, so I'll provide some context.
Please.
He was the democratically elected socialist prime minister of Iran in 1952. He was running on a platform largely of getting Iran's oil wealth and bringing it back to the Iranian people, sort of like kind of Chavez in Venezuela. He wanted to nationalize those industries and use the money to fund education. And, he was a socialist secular leader. And British Petroleum, which owned most of the oil interests in Iran, wasn't having that. So they contacted Churchill, who contacted Eisenhower, who staged a coup and installed the Shah. The Shah was a brutalist monarch who ruled for 20 years and then was overthrown by Ayatollah Khomeini and the Iranian Revolution, and that's why Iran's a theocracy today.
Interesting.
We love to see it. Ayatollah Khomeini and his clique of far-right Muslim extremists, which I hate to use that term. Really
honestly.
do, just because
it's so.
But they are reactionaries. They don't like women. They don't like
does
gays.
exist. Unfortunately.
And in this case, they weren't even anti-imperialists. So
fuck
right?
Fuck
oh, there we go. We did it.
Whatever.
It's fine. Okay, but anyways, so the far right here helps overthrow the socialist and install the king, and then later, once it gains more power, overthrows the king to gain its own power. This follows similarly to what happens in 1848. And this is the real danger of the socialist movement that we have growing in America today, to tie it back here. Because now we have, and we have to admit, on the ground, there is a growing socialist movement in the United States. Anarchists, communists,
100%.
Maoists, ists,
anything ists.
Egoists.
Anarcho-Rickists.
Rick and Mortyists. But it's growing, and there's obviously strange political growth on all different sides. And the second thing I would have to say is it's impossible to separate the growth of the socialist movement from 2016's Bernie Sanders campaign.
Of course,
he brought socialism into the mainstream for a lot of people. When the campaign failed, it made a lot of people realize that maybe electoralism is not the way to go.
Exactly.
But I think that there is great danger in people putting their trust in Bernie Sanders. I think a lot of people think that he could, get away with this New Deal. They think that, the norms that we have established will continue to run and allow him to run a campaign sort of similarly to how Trump did and then maybe win. But I think what we need to remember is that there are a lot of systemic checks to prevent a socialist from ever coming to power. Even a mild Bobby sauce socialist like Bernie Sanders in the United States.
Mild Bobby sauce, interesting.
There are many different forces that are much more threatened by Bernie than they are by Trump. And as loudly as they whine and complain about how Orange Man bad, they did not suggest doing independent runs to try to act as a spoiler candidate to stop him. However, we've already had 2 billionaires threaten to do that to Bernie Sanders.
That's a good
Michael
point.
Bloomberg and Howard Schultz. Those men both claim to hate Donald Trump viscerally. But why didn't they run as spoiler candidate Republican independents against him in 2016? Yet, they come out against Bernie. It's because he's going to raise their taxes.
Wow, it's almost like they profit off of this.
This is what we call a material constraint. And this is what Marx was warning about in the 18th Brumaire.
Okay.
Now, I'm not a great Marxist.
Yeah.
If there is a great Marxist out there listening to this, I'm sorry if I've butchered the 18th Brumaire.
Please come on the show. We would love to have you if you're like some wonderful Marxist.
But I will read one of my favorite quotes from this piece, and it's nice because it's right on the front page.
Please.
So we love it.
Oh, hell yes.
Men make their own history, but they do not make it as they please. They do not make it under self-selected circumstances, but under circumstances existing already, given and transmitted from the past. The tradition of all dead generations weighs like a nightmare on the brains of the living. And just as they seem to be occupied with revolutioning themselves and things, creating something that did not exist before, precisely in such epochs of revolutionary crisis, they anxiously conjure up the spirits of the past to their service, borrowing from them names, battle slogans, and costumes in order to present in this new scene in world history in time-honored disguise and borrowed language.
Damn.
What Marx is kind of talking about here
Yeah.
is how in past revolutions, and particularly the French, in order to kind of to give legitimacy to the radical change and the movement as it's going on, they have to draw allusions to past period of revolutionary change or time periods in the past when they were different.
Okay.
In both the French and the American liberal bourgeois revolutions, there were heavy allusions to the classical democracies of ancient Rome and of Greece. And the reason for this is because by evoking this cultural history of things having been different than the way they are, they are able to give legitimacy to their claims of change and to beat off attack from the other side of that they're enemies of society trying to destroy our way of life. They can come back and say, no, this is our way of life. This is how we've done things in the past. Now, Marx goes on to say that the socialist movement should not have to do such a thing.
Well, yeah.
Because it must be unique in that it is conscious of its place in history.
Yes.
In the past, you know, the bourgeois revolution would bump from issue to issue, usually evoking only minor change and then sparking again.
Right.
However, the proletarian revolution must be full.
Yes.
I.e., we don't have time to fuck it up again.
Yeah.
Especially with climate change hanging over our heads like a loaded gun.
Exactly.
So, color me cautiously optimistic about Bernie Sanders, and I think that, you know...
Yeah, no,
kind of carefully, I think it's important that we lend him our support, because the most important thing that Bernie Sanders is going to do is not raise the minimum wage to $15, and it's not install a Green New Deal. It is to convince millions of Americans that socialism could be a good thing for them.
That's pretty much exactly where I'm at, too. Like, you said it in all these fancy words, but yeah, I mean, you know, as an anarchist, I'm never going to actually trust a politician, even if
they shouldn't.
Yeah.
On some level, anyone who runs for office is a narcissist.
Exactly. And, you know, even the people who find their way there through whatever end up probably being narcissists as well. It's not a position that you want anybody to be in.
However, speaking of which, we should, maybe not this week, we can maybe go over it lightly this week, but I think in maybe the coming weeks, I could do a little research and we can come back and talk about our new SGA campaigns that are coming. Speaking of narcissists. Speaking of
narcissists. Yeah, we don't have to comment on that this week. I mean, a lot of things were just announced today. In fact, everything was just announced today.
Yeah. I've seen, I think perhaps that Trayana Barnes is running.
Yes, Trayana Barnes is running with Ethan Craig as her vice president.
Oh, Ethan Craig. Who is he?
Ethan Craig
Hold on, let me look him up. I think that sounds familiar. I have a feeling that I really don't like him.
The only thing that I know about Ethan Craig is that he's a very large Trey Baker supporter.
Oh, we love to see that.
So you love to see that. Back when that whole kerfuffle happened, he was apparently very solidly on the side of letting the good old justice stay. So as much as I love Trayana, I have a few questions about that.
Oh, I hate this guy.
Oh!
Yeah, he's like the most obnoxious sig up.
Oh, well, you fucking hate to see it.
Yeah.
Greeks.
Not that I'm trying to, talk terrible about him on microphone or anything.
Yeah, no.
But I don't know. Yeah, for whatever reason, I love Trayana.
Personal opinions.
Trayana is a very progressive woman.
Yes.
I think she's really got her heart in the right place.
Of course.
But the fact that she's taking Ethan Craig very much reminds me of, this was 2 years ago when Sammy Dada was running. One of the people who was running against him was Deja Rollins, who had Troy Corns with her.
Okay.
And
I do not know.
And for some reason, it seems like, at least at NKU, there seems to be a strategy with, I'm going to do air quotes, progressives
Yes.
who run for SGA, that they feel like they need to take one of the most obnoxious, more conservative Greeks with them in order to win the Greek vote. Because
to sort of like bridge the gap,
exactly,
I guess.
yeah, because they want to quote unquote represent all students. But
Yeah.
and I think that there's a larger element to it than that. It's not just that they're looking to represent all students; it's that they're trying to cultivate that Greek vote, because there hasn't been an SGA presidential election where the person who won didn't receive the majority share of the Greek vote.
That's a good point.
That's why I was really excited with Gishelle's campaign last year, because Taylor Gagne and Hannah Edelman were both running against each other, and I thought there was a real significant chance to split that Greek vote between the two of them.
Yeah.
And really, a more progressive campaign like Giselle was running, and Giselle, fantastic.
Yes.
Great stuff.
I was a big supporter.
Yeah, I'm a big fan still. And she had a platform that she was running on, saving the ECC, bringing more environmentalism into the school. But
so many good stances on important issues.
Yeah, but it just ended up not materializing. And I think that any progressive who tries to run a campaign of compromise with the Greeks will fail, because they don't want compromise.
That's true.
Yeah.
That's true. I mean, I've I said this on an earlier program. I've only had 2 programs. But I sort of believe that SGA dynamics and sort of how the Greeks play into that is very much so just a very small scale, lab rat setting of class antagonisms and stuff.
Yeah.
And it's very much so run by the people who already have that, not to sound like Peter Coffin, but social capital, and want to keep their influence over the campus, basically.
Yeah, and without going into conspiracy theories here much,
yeah.
But I mean, I will really, on the top level, I think part of the reason for the Greek dominance in SGA is one, they actually think about it and know about it, and
that's true.
Quote, sort of mildly care about it.
That's true.
Now, they mostly care about it for 2 reasons. One, because it makes their organizations look good to the other organizations if they have control shares. So it's really just a power game.
Yes.
The Greeks are always reputation fighting with each other,
of course,
just because that's what they do for fun.
Yeah.
And the other factor is that the Greek organizations are some of the larger, more organized institutions at the school.
That's true.
And so, when you've got groups of people organized, and then they're also, motivated to vote, that's where that control comes from.
That's how movements are made. That's true.
Now, to dive into conspiracy theories.
Oh, boy. Okay.
Because what I put forward there is the sort of uncontested facts.
Sure.
Now, if we draw from the uncontested facts and go a little further,
make some inferences.
I'll introduce a couple of more uncontestable facts.
Sure.
And then I will.
I like how we said we weren't going to dive into this now.
I'm gonna put out some more uncontestable facts.
Okay.
And then I will perhaps
draw some inferences.
Yes.
Okay.
Okay. Here's another uncontested fact for you.
Okay.
The Greek organizations also occupy the majority of the administrative adjacent positions, i.e. these are things like Victor Guides, RAs,
I see.
Anyone who takes pictures and gets them posted up around the school. If you look at all of our models, our PR, the people who are on the stickers, people who are on the t-shirts, people who are on the videos, they're all Greeks. They often have their Greek letters on. Now, who picks those people? The administration picks those people. The administration picks primarily Greeks for those positions. Now, you could say, well, maybe only Greeks apply. I don't believe that in my heart of hearts. Now, maybe that's the conspiracy element.
Yeah, because I have.
Funny. But, that isn't a sort of semi-uncontestable fact.
Yeah.
Now, here's another semi-uncontestable fact. The Greek organizations on this campus obligate their members to do things that are official school functions. Okay. Now, these official school functions that are usually predominated by Greeks seem to have a hard time getting other students out there. Okay. And let me give an example. So, NKU has spent a very large amount of money to construct a new sports stadium in the past 5-7 years. We've all seen it. It's over there. Yeah. I have, information that they are still very much in debt from the construction of said stadium. And
I have the feeling that that's not a large jump to make.
And I've also heard that it's not making as much money as they thought it would.
Interesting.
Almost as if a non-profit institution shouldn't try to pursue profit.
Almost as if they should get people other than R. Kelly.
Ho!
Hey!
Yeah.
But wow.
Big creep. But anyways, so they are trying to fill the arena with students, especially as we're trying to also bump up our sports team.
Of course.
But the thing about NKU is, oh gosh, can I say this out loud? We're all busy and overworked, and we don't have time to go to things on campus, and we don't have time to go to sporting events because
fair.
we're very, very stressed out. This is a campus of 16,000 students.
That's fair.
And we can't hardly get, more than a few hundred to fill out our stadium.
Yeah.
Most games, that stadium's not filled out. And the people who are in that stadium are Greek, and they're at that stadium because they get points. In fact, some of the sororities will actually fine their members for not going to enough NKU-sponsored events.
Really?
Yes, that's true. Now, they have to collect a certain number of points every semester. Now, some of these events are other Greek events, but many of them are NKU official specific events. So NKU can kind of dictate...
And not to interrupt, but it must be said that you're saying this as somebody who was
I was a part of SIGUP for about a year and a half. Yes.
Okay.
And I've had a lot of friends, or I had a lot of friends in the Greek community. And so I know a little bit about how it operates on the inside. I should also, more context for myself, if viewers are unfamiliar, I did about a 2.5-year tour of duty in student government as well.
Ben is the local weird leftist wizard.
Yeah, I inherited the title from one Brad Blankenship, who was much weirder and much lefter than me beforehand. I'm actually quite moderate when you compare to him.
Really? I would love to meet him.
Well, he's a strange guy. And he's in Hungary right now.
Oh.
He does a lot of drugs.
Oh. Well.
But he writes pretty well.
Okay.
He's a very dogmatic Marxist-Leninist, though, I should warn you.
Mm.
Yeah. He's accused me of being a Western chauvinist more than one time, just for being anarchist. But
what?
Yeah, it's fine. It's fine.
Okay,
yeah,
all right.
We don't talk anymore on account of that.
Oh.
But anyways, to go back to the Greeks. So
yes, the Greeks.
So we've got a system set up here.
I have no clue if I'm going to be able to publish any of this, but it's fine.
Okay, so we've got a system set up here where the administration can dictate events to the Greek community who will go out and fill those things out.
Okay.
They will also, for the administration, basically present good face, right?
Okay. Yes.
For photographs, etc.
Yes.
Now, let's move on to student government. Student governments were created usually in the late 70s, early 80s, and that was largely in response to the massive student protest movement of the 60s with Vietnam and the Civil Rights Movement.
Yeah.
And university administrators did not like that because it made them uncomfortable.
Why would they?
It made them look bad.
Nobody in power
It forced them to do things they did not want to do.
Yeah.
So
like
they create
add an LGBTQ+ office.
Yeah. So power has a tendency to say it's doing one thing and then really do another, especially liberal power.
Ooh.
Which has to maintain a veil of accessibility and democracy,
civility,
and inclusivity and civility. And really, in actuality, really none of these things exist.
No, of course
not. And I've seen, I can tell you, inclusivity in student government, sure, if anybody is allowed in, yet almost every student government I've ever seen is majority white. Yes. Civility, sure, there's forced civility in the student government.
Of course.
However, when my friend
these people don't like each
Noel Waltz had something to say that did not sit well with the student government, they were gavelled and forced to, eventually.
And I believe they called an executive session with that.
Yeah, forced executive session.
Yes.
So, these things that they claim are really just illusions.
Of course.
And student government in itself is an illusion. It was not designed to give students a voice to the administration. It was not designed to encourage cooperation. It was designed to shut down student energy and motivation. It was designed to channel it somewhere where it couldn't hurt anybody. And that's why the student government has a budget that they can manage of about $5,000 to $10,000 that they can spend on fixing sidewalks or creating statues.
Ooh, almost as if it's by design.
Now, when we start putting all these things together, what have we got going on here? Oh, I should probably talk one more time about the institution of Greek life itself.
Why not?
Perhaps where it comes from and maybe why it's given all of these resources and access to continue.
I would love that.
So, if you're in a high school,
yes,
and you're a principal, and let's say the students are doing something you don't like. I don't know, maybe striking.
Maybe
sure,
striking.
That would be really cool.
Yeah,
that's something students are doing these days a little bit. We love to see it.
Should do it more.
You can dictate to them. You can put them in detention. You can keep them outside of school. You can make them have lunches separately. Now, if you're the president of a university and your students are doing something you don't like, your actions are rather limited.
Yeah.
You can expel them, at which point you're no longer receiving their tuition.
Yeah.
You can fine them, at which point you get a little bit of money, but then again, they maybe have to drop out. They can't get tuition.
Or they could just keep doing it for the wealthy students.
And really, honestly, your ability to directly regulate their behavior is really minimal.
Yeah.
You can't do a whole lot because we're adults.
Yeah. Interesting. It's like we're people now.
However, if you need something done from your student body, it would be really nice to have some kind of informal structural organization that you could threaten to motivate them. And so the Greek organizations come in to fill this role. So the Greek organizations, they come out of cults, basically, in the late 1870s.
That's not art.
That was a really fun thing to do. The late 1870s, 1880s.
Yeah.
People were bored, especially upper middle class white folks were bored, and all of their dads had these really weird secret societies, like the Freemasons and the Shriners
KKK.
and the KKK. But it was really funky stuff. It was kind of a thing at that time that people did for fun. So they were created on college campuses, and then they really kind of started to die down after a while. But they were semi-revived by university policy because they prevent a very convenient way to discipline the student body.
Okay.
Because if large sections of the student body are doing something you don't like, you just have to go to every president of every Greek organization and say, if you don't do things like this, then your organization is banned from campus.
That's, pretty much.
Bing, bang, boom. There you go.
Bing, bang, boom.
Now, to kind of draw all this together,
yes,
we have a working dynamic between an institution, the student government,
yes,
that sort of has power.
Yeah,
to an extent.
Has made changes.
But is primarily ruled by a structured group of entrenched wealth.
Yes.
And then regulated by another group of power, which would be the administration.
Yes.
And the interaction between all these three is materially based. And I know that some of the things that I say sound crazy, but I think that our viewers here are strong enough to be able to put these little bits of facts together and see how they interact.
I mean,
the only time... Now, I was in student government for 2.5 years.
Yes.
The only time I ever saw serious radical action undertaken was when the student government was pushed by outside actors.
Ooh.
They refused to remove Trey Baker from office. He refused to resign until 30, 40, 50 people went in that room and made their voices heard. Now, we are having NK Unity sometime here rather soon.
I hope so.
I don't know if it's in a week or two, or maybe it perhaps already occurred. I'm a super senior now, so I don't keep up on the events like I used
That's
to.
fair.
I'm a busy boy.
I've just been out of the
busy
works.
boy thing.
Busy thing.
Yeah,
busy guy. Busy dude.
Busy question mark.
Yeah, it's fair.
I like it that way.
Hey, there you go.
But NK Unity is coming out, and I actually was there when NK Unity was incepted.
Really?
It was my first semester in student government. And the scenario was some nasty racist piece of trash went around and put up Welcome White Week flyers all over campus, which really incensed our African American community.
Of course.
Willingly. No.
Yeah.
I saw a student government under... Oh gosh, who was it before Sammy? I can't remember his name. He was the very good-looking fellow that everybody liked. I can't remember his name right now. He had a beard. Oh well, he's white. There's a picture of him up somewhere.
I feel like I know vaguely who you're talking about.
Yeah.
I can find his name.
Yeah, it's not important. But anyways, we had a student government that was very resistant to any real efforts to stamp out this problem. There was a lot of fighting, a lot of back and forth. And there was really just mass action by the African American community coming in and speaking and making their voices heard.
Of course.
Now, eventually, all of this energy was channeled into what is now known as NK Unity, which has had mixed effects. I really hate to voice my own opinion on it because it's, I wasn't affected by that incident.
Yeah.
And, I think that
we're just,
anything that encourages harmony of some level on this campus is good.
Yeah.
But again, this comes back to the point where I feel like NK Unity, like many things...
It's a Band-Aid?
It was a Band-Aid, and it was something that was designed to kind of diffuse that real energy.
And, that sort of... Vaguely, I'm trying to remember the date of it. That's why I just opened this back up. In that it was just a bit of a public thing that then nobody really did anything about. But you remember, I think it was not last November, but the year before that, how there was the big right-wing meme going around on the internet of, the Antifa super soldier takeover.
Oh, yeah, November 11th. Right?
November 11th. And then a bunch of people went around and, put all this weird... right-wing propaganda, chalked it all over the ground in NKU, and was November 11th, watch out for the left. And I was yeah, right? And I'm some real, Proud Boy stuff. And nobody really said anything about it. I was the only person I even saw talking about it at that point. Because that was before I had met up with any of you guys, so... Yeah, it seems like a lot of people really don't feeling like they have to do anything,
Well, I mean, we need to realize that, the way thing works is much like how it works for any sort of group creature. A single wolf by itself is powerful, but it can't take down an elk, and it can't take down a buffalo. Exactly. However, a pack of wolves is a dangerous force.
Easily.
Our strength really comes through collective action. A single person is only so powerful, and the real power that you have is the ability to influence others to be able to think and act differently.
That's
And
fair.
if you believe in building a world where people are treated fairly, where they don't have to suffer unnecessarily, and where they have a chance at improving their lot, then that's the only way to get there.
Hell yeah.
And we're going to see that. You're going to see that wherever you look. If you're looking at local government, if you're
Mhm.
looking at state government, if you're trying to create a Maoist insurrection,
Wow.
or if you just want a fucking $15 an hour minimum wage on your campus.
Mhm.
This is really the true thing that frustrates me about SGA.
Yes.
The elections are coming up because I'm not going to run again.
Okay, well, yeah.
Even though I might think it would be fun, it's bad for my mental health, it's bad for my time, it's bad for my energy, it's bad for
Exactly.
my other goals. But
hurts.
and I'm so frustrated because if you go through the official channels in SGA and you play by the rules and you listen to the executive board and you don't upset the Greeks
Mhm.
and you don't get shouted down by Sarah Aikman when you propose something crazy,
Yes.
the space of what you're allowed to change is really quite small.
Quite limited.
There's not a whole lot you can do. However, if we had a student movement on this campus, if we had people, specifically students and staff, coming together to put pressure on them, we
Okay.
could do all kinds of things. Other student governments around the country right now are passing anti-police brutality legislation and forcing the university to change their policing policies. They're uniting students and staff together to raise the minimum wage on their campus to $15 an hour, a living wage, so that they could afford to go to school and not have to overwork, which on a campus where something like 80 or 90% of students work,
Yeah.
might be a nice thing to have.
Yes, it might
you
be
know?
nice.
Especially when our college was founded to improve accessibility and affordability to college for people who couldn't afford to go to UK and UC in the first place. And I know that if that kind of student movement was built and there was the energy and dynamic behind it, that it could beat the Greek bloc and we could see a really progressive candidate in office. However, unless that sort of outside-the-box movement is built up, it's never going to get there. And student government will continue to legislate in new rails and perhaps new eateries and maybe a new branding opportunity or two.
Hopefully. Speaking of...
That's about all I have to say about that.
Hey. So I was looking... I heard a fun little rumor, related but unrelated. We were just talking about... You said something about, like, the power SGA has is actually very little. And it sort of got me thinking about, like, okay, well, I heard a little rumor that what they're trying to do right now, quote-unquote trying to do, such a small thing, is potentially bring Chick-fil-A onto campus.
Oh, they've been trying that for quite some time
Yeah.
now, actually.
But the actually, not to say any names, but somebody very entrenched with the NKU LGBTQ Programs and Services Office told me that they had actually remounted
Oh, wow.
a little campaign to get Chick-fil-A back on office.
That's so nice.
And I heard that they were holding a vote for that at this last SGA meeting on the 25th, which I unfortunately missed. But I'm looking at the Northerner article now, and it doesn't look like any vote was actually made. It says here that they're talking about the library resolution. So let's see if any changes was made on that, because obviously that's a terrible situation.
Definitely watching that. We love to make student workers making $7.25 an hour work overnights all the time, all year round. We also love, as LGBTQ community members, to advocate for bringing institutions to campus that would receive tuition money and then send it to gay conversion camps. Yeah, which are now illegal in many different countries.
Yes, exactly. And they still do, surprisingly enough. There was a whole big hubbub about it, like fucking... Oh, sorry, can't say that. 4 years ago? And then they were like, oh, yeah, I got it. And then they didn't really do anything about it. So...
Liberals not actually doing anything about something?
Interesting.
What?
Interesting. Okay. Apparently, I don't think any big decisions were made on that library resolution. This was just the good old Senator Jarrett Lopez talking about
Naming names now.
naming names. We've been naming names all day.
Yeah, I've been naming names all day.
But the good old Senator Jarrett Lopez talking about how apparently Steely Library has canceled subscription to several academic databases.
Oh.
So maybe we just will never have to write a paper again.
I would love that. All of my papers, I think, should be written with only me as a source.
Yeah. Just gotta trust me.
I will cite myself, and then I will cite Wikipedia one time.
Yeah, trust me, bro. Trust me. Okay. What else? Big topic. We have a little bit longer. We really have as long as we want.
Mm-hmm.
I gave us like 20 more minutes.
Nice. All right.
So I don't know if you have anything else you want to like really dive into. What do you know about the India-Pakistan stuff going on right now?
Not too terribly much, honestly. When it comes to foreign policy, I've been mostly watching the Venezuela situation as it's ticking around.
Okay, anything to add on that?
I don't know. Venezuela is a situation that requires a lot of nuance to process.
Of course.
Because, as anarchists, we have to recognize that sometimes there are very bad things going on all sides.
Yeah.
Which makes it very hard for us to back
very
anybody.
Disheartening.
And also, as people living in northern Kentucky, there's not a whole lot we can really do materially for the people of Venezuela.
Exactly.
We can lend our, critical support, which is thoughts and prayers.
Yeah,
really.
Thoughts and prayers.
But, I think that, obviously, the United States should not intervene in Venezuela. Actually, and this comes to touch on, small, irritating issues of electoral politics.
Yes.
Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez is really just kicking herself in the face
100%.
over and over again when it comes to this. Just keeps making
is Bernie now.
bad mistakes. Bernie has not been great on this. It's kind of funny because, I think he has a lot more spotlight on him than she does.
Yeah.
I mean, a lot of people are paying attention to AOC.
Yeah.
But AOC is also in a position where she can kind of be as radical as they want. Bernie's running for president.
Yeah.
He has to win Trump country.
Exactly.
Alexandria does not have to win Trump country. She's from Brooklyn? Around Brooklyn?
Think so?
That district?
Let me check.
One of the more radical parts of one of the more radical cities in the country. But, yeah, she, both, seemed okay with the accusations against Jeremy Corbyn of anti-Semitism for his mild Bobby sauce critiques of Israel.
I believe she was born in the Bronx.
Ah, gotcha.
Okay.
So around that area.
Yeah.
But still, very radical part of a fairly radical city.
Yeah.
And yet, she went ahead and kind of condoned Jeremy Corbyn as an anti-Semite for merely voicing support for the people of Palestine and their cause.
Which is ridiculous.
And then, she did not join Bernie on just simply not calling for intervention in Venezuela.
Yeah, you
could
have just said nothing.
For sending things. Sometimes you can do nothing. Actually, there was a glorious period in American history where we were anti-
We really didn't do anything!
We didn't want to do, after World War I and then before World War II, everybody was just so upset by how World War I turned out, they didn't want to mess with it.
We were just like, whatever.
Intervene, and we gave that up really quick when we realized that we can, and we might as well.
Wanted to exploit the world.
It's so frustrating. The American people after World War II had a choice between, socialism and democracy and empire. And because of the way our state was constructed, it went with empire. And it's been empire ever since.
And you hate to see it.
We do hate to see it. And it's running out of time.
It's running out of time.
But no, we're also running out of time here, I guess.
That's true. Climate. The climate is happening.
It is. It's unfortunate.
Speaking of something that I've been wanting to ask you about, actually, that I just haven't seen you in enough capacity until now to ask you about. What's going on with the whole economic crisis, if you wanted to talk about that?
Oh, gosh. Yeah, I haven't really talked about this a whole lot. So I've been kind of hedging on a large-scale system collapse at some point in the near future.
Yeah.
It is coming. It's a real question of when the timing is, and this is going to have major political implications.
Okay.
So our economic effects are global now, right? Which means that when things start to go bottoms up, it affects some places
everything
before others. And yes, it affects everything. Because the United States is really the world's center of finance, and we are, the reserve currency for much of the globe, things have a tendency to hit us last. And also, the things that are kind of boiling up in our system have a tendency to show themselves elsewhere.
Oh.
And this has already happened.
Okay.
So the economies of Turkey, Brazil, and Argentina are all in serious backslides right now, as well as Venezuela and Russia. And some of that, for some of them, is from sanctions. But the rest of them, it is from over-leveraging debt and acts by their central banks. So if we want to understand the current crisis and what's going on, we really have to go back and look at what happened in the most recent one, which is 2008. And this is kind of a dialectic thing. Everything that exists comes from something before it and is shaped by that, correct?
Yes.
So after 2008, our housing market and our whole financial sector basically completely shit the bed. The banks were going to be unable to secure people's deposits without government intervention, which means that you couldn't take your money out, and if you had any in there, it would have been gone.
Gone.
It all would have been gone.
Oops.
You would have had no savings, and you would have lost your house.
Oof.
And the Bush and then Obama administrations recognized that, golly gee, if that happened, things might not work out so well for them.
Oh, yeah, that would be bad.
That would be bad. So what they decided to do instead was they realized that they have a printing press,
Mm.
and that if they need to make money, they can just print lots of it.
Wow.
And then they will put the debt exchange on the books, and that's what they did. So our money is actually not printed in the Treasury. It's issued from the Federal Reserve because everything is digital these days, so all they really have to do is authorize digital transactions,
Right.
which they do. And then they will take, in exchange for the debt that they process and put it on their books.
Mm-hmm.
The Federal Reserve is massively, massively over-leveraged. But, and the Federal Reserve serves as the United States central bank.
Okay.
And just to provide a little context, the central bank basically is the bank that lends to all other major banks, who then lend to smaller banks, who then lend to us. That's
so
kind of how
it's
the
the
system.
big one.
Yes, it's where they can get access to actual cash and where they get that from.
Okay.
And as such, the Federal Reserve controls something called the interest rate. This is the amount of money that when it gives money to, let's say, U.S. Bank, that U.S. Bank has to pay back over that limited amount of time.
Yeah.
Right? So they can, if they crank this up, that makes our banks less likely to receive loans from the Federal Reserve, which means they're going to be stingier to lend.
Yes.
If they put it really low, then, they can get money for nothing. They can get it from the Federal Reserve at, a very low rate and then lend to us at a high rate, make lots of money. That's supposed to fuel the economy.
Okay.
The Federal Reserve is, now, the issue with this is that if you leave the rates very low, it tends to create speculative bubbles. This is because if, let's say, I'm a bank, I want to make money. The government, Federal Reserve, says that it's going to lend me money at 1% interest or 0.5% interest, which is something like what our rates were after 2008 and what they've kind of continued to be since. Yeah. That is extraordinarily low. You can lend to poor and desperate people at, I think, a legal rate of like 20 or 25%. Oh. So if you're, a bank, there's no real reason for you to not take as much of that as you can and then stick it in as many places as possible. And that's what they started doing. Here are the places where they stuck it. Silicon Valley. Oh. The fracking industry. Oh. And real estate again, actually. Oh. Interestingly enough.
Wow, they just did it again.
When I tell you this, it'll start to make sense. Yeah. Because we've seen a whole lot of companies coming out of Silicon Valley that don't make any logical sense at all. Does anyone remember Juicero?
Yes, I do. I gotta look at that right now.
For our viewers who don't remember, Juicero was a juicer that did not juice. It would also required a Wi-Fi connection and an app and an account to be created for it to use. You had to purchase pre-ground bags of juice. Like you buy the juice and then you put it in the Juicero machine and then you connect it to Wi-Fi and then you would push a button and then that machine would then just squeeze the bag and then the juice would come out of the bag. However, you could also just buy the bag of juice and then crush it with your hands, and then it would be the exact same effect. And I think Juicero cost something like $200, $250. It was backed by Google. Of course, if we want to look at a bigger example, we can look at Tesla and Elon Musk. Yeah. Which, for the longest time, and I saw this coming, really, he's totally exploding these days. He's under Security Exchange Commission fraud because he lied about the numbers of Tesla cars that they were producing, because Musk has received a bunch of venture capital money and government subsidies and not been able to reach anything like what he's promised. He's a snake oil salesman who's taking a lot of fake money to make it happen and basically riding on that giant ball of debt. Okay. The fracking industry expanded. However, when oil prices went down, it no longer became viable. So there are huge boom towns all over the Dakotas right now that are basically just empty, where people went out to get oil and then it deteriorated. And fracking hasn't been practical since. No. So we and then for the last bit, and this is another story that you'll sound familiar. If it seems strange that we are having this housing crisis all of a sudden, where houses are getting much, much, much more expensive, that's because this debt is being issued and siloed off into purchasing these properties, refurbishing these properties, gentrification. All of that takes financial capital backstopping it, somebody to lend the money for those developments to happen. And this is where it's coming from. Okay. The problem is, eventually that money has to be paid back. Yeah. And if you're not doing anything productive with it or anything that makes sense, you can't do that. Exactly. So this was the third problem here, which is that in response to 2008, we've put out all this crazy money, right? Yeah. But the Federal Reserve can only drop interest rates so low. Okay. And we've kept them at the floor since 2008. Before 2008, they're fairly relatively high. Although there were other bubbles throughout the 2000s and the 90s. The 90s tech bubble was created in much the same way. Through kind of Federal Reserve policy raising, lowering. When this bubble pops, and it will pop, because all bubbles do. All bubbles do. There will not be the tools necessary to fight it in the way that we did in 2008. We can't just slush a bunch of money in there and then crank the interest rates down. Yeah. Because we already slushed all our money. And you can't reduce an interest rate lower than 0.
Yeah, exactly.
And it's at like 0.75, 1.25 right now. And also, here's the other thing. The Federal Reserve is supposed to continue to raise interest rates. There were supposed to be 3 interest rate raises last year, and I think they only managed to squeeze out 1 or 2. There's supposed to be more this year. That hasn't been happening. You may have seen some Trump tweets about how he's, always tweeting about all the Federal Reserve raising rates. Trump is an idiot. I think I don't need to say
well,
this.
yeah.
But I think that he or someone smart near him recognizes that when those interest rates start to come up and the amount of the repayments increase on it, the debt will collapse.
Yes.
And when the debt collapses, we could be facing something as mild as 2008 to as moderate as the Great Depression to as severe as an absolute currency crisis where the dollar becomes totally worthless and hyperinflates a la interwar Germany. This is also not fun because in addition to all this money lending that we've done inside our own borders, we've also done a lot of it elsewhere. And other central banks in other parts of the world have done lots of lending elsewhere. So just to name a few points, the crises in Turkey was caused because the interest rates on their debt, which was denominated in Spanish and Italian dollars and issued by the ECB in a roundabout way, European Central Bank, those interest rates came up and Turkey was not able to pay them whatsoever. And most of the money in Turkey was put into like real estate. And there's some really strange things. There's this area in Turkey, you'll have to just Google the context, but they built like castles. They built like kind of like a gated community of like $500,000 castles, but they built them all right next to each other, and they are all the exact same house.
Interesting.
So there's like 800 houses that each cost like $2 or $3 million, all built in the last 5 years, all built right next to each other with like, very, very small, like Newport-style lawn space.
Okay.
But they're like super expensive houses, right?
Huh.
Nobody buys them because nobody who wants to buy a $2 million house, A, wants it next to somebody else, and B, wants it to look the exact same as the other 800.
Exactly.
This was badly spent money. However, they spent an insane amount of money doing it, and they did that in European demarked currency, which is now needing to be paid back, that they don't have money for. So their economy has totally exploded and their currency has inflated like crazy. The same thing has happened in Argentina with loans made in US-backed dollars. There are other signs of really serious bubbles elsewhere. There's a major real estate bubble going on in China. You don't have to really, you may have seen, if you've ever seen the ghost cities in China pop up once or twice on your news story or your feed, that's where this is coming from. Large amounts of capital being invested. China's also invested capital a lot of places in Africa and the Middle East trying to build infrastructure. We'll see if that works out to them. They, sort of did these things as kind of like a good faith thing, China helping develop the third world, maybe even with some slight Maoist vibes, because China kind of calls back to Mao like we sort of call back to the founding fathers.
That's fair.
It's sort of like a legitimacy thing, right? But they were supposed to be very low repayments on this debt. However, now they're starting to raise the rates up, and these countries, like in Africa where they've built them, they don't have the money for it. So they're already struggling with these payments. This is going to continue and cycle. So we're looking at a very big crisis. Now, the political implications of this, if this happens in the Trump administration, wow, that would be a perfect bookend, wouldn't it? Very, very similar, there'd be real similar vibes to what happened with Bush, right? He had the big financial explosion at the end of his term. It was his fault for overseeing it the whole time and not doing anything about it, but it really was started by Bill Clinton. The same thing would happen with Trump. The current financial crisis that's building was really engineered by the Obama administration, but Trump, instead of slowly taking the air of that balloon, has just pushed that thing up, especially with the tax cuts that he did, with the changing the Federal Reserve trimming out, and then refusing to raise rates, making them stay at the floor. He's just kind of pushing this thing. So also, the longer that it takes for this to happen, the worse it will be.
Of course.
I think now a best case scenario for how this could go down is that it happens sometime before the election in 2020. A major economic crisis preceding the Bernie Sanders campaign would really politically motivate people, and it would give him a huge mandate for government jobs. It's a lot easier to advocate for a Green New Deal when you've got a new Great Depression to go along with it, right?
That's true.
Those two things kind of match up with each other. However, there is also the dangerous threat of, by some miracle, by the grace of God, Donald Trump loses and Bernie Sanders is able to dodge the DCC and the billionaires and the military-industrial complex and get into office, at which point the economy promptly explodes on him. And then he is unable to leverage the tools of the state to fix it, at which point everyone associates socialism in the United States with absolute economic collapse.
Oh, I didn't even think about that.
Now, beware that. Another scenario that could happen is Donald Trump. This is actually maybe my current head calculus. This economic crisis occurs sometimes before or just after in November in 2020. I suspect by my head math that it's probably going to happen in November of 2019 of this year. Just because things are very tight. I actually sort of thought it was coming in the last fall, most recent, like 4 months ago. But if it didn't happen then, it'll probably happen in the upcoming fall. Either that or maybe sometime over the summer.
Okay.
But probably this year. If it makes it all the way to 2020, it will probably either happen just before or just after the presidential election.
Cool.
Now, here's a scenario that I'm currently imagining.
Okay.
Trump obviously will be the Republican nominee.
Yes.
He will have the same base of support that he had last time.
Yes.
And the same advantage in the Electoral College.
Mm-hmm.
Bernie Sanders is going to absolutely wipe the floor with every single Democrat who runs against him in the primary.
I think
It's
so.
going to look a lot like what Trump did to the Republican Party.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. A lot of people don't remember how Fox News freaked out about Trump at first, because they were very much dominated by the neoconservative part of the party as opposed to the paleocon that Donald Trump is. And by paleocon, paleo as in old, con as in conservative, old conservative, i.e. fascist. It's a nice way of saying
fascistic.
Not that neoconservatives aren't also fascistic. It's just really different flavors, right?
Yeah.
But I think that the same thing is going to happen with Bernie. Mm-hmm. The establishment of the party doesn't want him, but the whole base does.
Okay.
And every other candidate who's on that field has mostly adopted his agenda with just like maybe a few things changed here and there.
Exactly.
You know, I'm a little bit more cautious. I have
Mm-hmm.
a different outlook on things.
Yeah.
So they're all just going to appear as weak, warmer versions of him.
Exactly.
He's obviously going to shine. And also, Bernie Sanders is the only person who goes on television who actually sticks it to the capitalist class.
Yeah.
Nobody, I say this all the time, there's nobody who really can go on TV and say the things that he says and get away with it.
That's true.
You can't fire him because he's a political candidate.
Mm-hmm.
You can't kick him off the screen because he's too popular with everybody.
Exactly.
So you have to let him go on and talk. And what he says is things that are true. Like they asked him about Howard Schultz and his threatened independent run, and Bernie said, "Why do you even pay attention to Howard Schultz? If he was just, if he worked a different job, nobody would care.
Exactly.
But he has $2 billion, and that buys a lot of influence, and that's why you care what he thinks, and that's why you're asking me about it right now.
Ooh.
Who else in American society can go on television and say things like that, or who's willing to?"
Mm-hmm.
Nobody can do both. Either you're not willing, or either you can't get away with it.
That's a good point.
Now, I imagine that Bernie's going to win the nomination, and I think that there actually might be a spoiler run by an independent billionaire coming out. I think that maybe Howard Schultz, maybe Michael Bloomberg, one of them runs as an independent, and all of those liberals who always decried Bernie supporters for not voting for Hillary, and who, whined about the idea of Bernie doing an independent run, will vote for the independent candidate and not Bernie Sanders because he's going to raise their taxes. And it turns out
of course.
They care about that a lot more than they care about listening to black women. That's just how it is. And, I think that Bernie might lose in that case, and then Donald Trump will be president, and then the economy will explode. And if that doesn't motivate people to socialism, I don't know what will.
Yeah, and then, I guess the one big thing that... We're almost out of time here.
Yeah.
But I guess the one big thing that I really have going through that is then, what is to be done?
Yeah, what is to be done?
What is to be done? In the event that, worst possible thing, it's still... Everything fails, and it's still Trump in all these years, and the economy does collapse, then I think, at least on a philosophical, theoretical level, there's nothing left of revolution.
Well, there may be.
I don't know. Would reformists still have a chance?
That is, I think, if we're looking at trying to do a real revolution, not just anything electoral, but actually, overthrow of the state and, real change, we need to get people on the idea that maybe the state is legitimate. Maybe our political process is illegitimate. Maybe everything is compromised too much to go through the official channels. Yeah. Which is kind of like what I was talking about in student government.
Exactly.
It is compromised from the inside, and in many ways it is structurally designed against the improvement of your life.
Exactly.
And really, the only way you can fix these problems is by, tackling them.
Yes.
Is to go through some process. And that process is collective action.
Exactly.
And we're going to have to get there somehow.
And
I think an event like that could wake people up to it.
Yes, I hope so. And, it's like, bouncing off that as well. If the only forms of resistance that you have access to are ones that have been approved by the people you're resisting, it's not going to do anything.
Yeah, you cannot tweet your way out of this, folks.
Unfortunately. I wish I could. But
however, continue to tweet.
And
continue to support Bernie, and continue to irritate liberals and baby boomers, because even if all those terrible things that I just hypothesized come to pass, I would remind you that the DSA and most of the socialist movements that
Exactly.
have sprung out in the wake of Trump, that have fought against ICE, that have fought against police brutality, sprung out of the campaign which failed. All of those active organizers who now found themselves with the Trump administration and lots of free time, who decided they wanted to continue to do something. And so they joined other organizations and they got involved. And you better believe that if Bernie, who's already planned to put together a grassroots movement, is running as president, many more people will get involved. And if that fails, all of those people are going to be active, there, and angry. And we need to be there holding the black flag for them when they're ready for it.
God bless. God bless. Okay, so, yeah. That's amazing. That was an amazing ending. Is there anything you want to shout out? I guess we already talked a lot about DSA. DSA is a nice little group to get involved in. I know we spoke about them earlier.
Shout out to the Northern Kentucky Cincinnati DSA.
Yes.
They're always looking for members. They're actually going through a change period right now. So
yes.
if you wanted to have an influence in that chapter, this is the time to do it. Shout out to the Ohio Valley Industrial Workers of the World.
Godspeed.
The best union that ever will be.
Always
recommend that everybody get involved with that as well.
Of course.
And, hell, if you're not doing anything on Monday at 3:30, go into student government and yell at somebody because it'll feel good and you deserve to.
It'll feel good. Get your voice heard. Revolutionary Student Union is currently still not really meeting right now. We're in a bit of a hiatus just to get everything figured out. But
everyone's so busy.
Everyone's so busy, and we're all very depressed.
It's true.
As it happens, did you want to shout out your Twitter? Or how do you feel about that?
You can follow me on Twitter at Bluegrass Red if you want to. That's also my YouTube handle, but don't expect to find any good content either of those places.
Hey, that's valid. My Twitter is at anarchanovaism. It's anarcha, not anarcho, because we have flavor here.
This podcast has been like the best thing that I've done in forever.
It's fun.
Did you record it?
Yes.
Okay,
yes.
Cool. I'll probably put this up on my channel actually.
Hell yeah. Hell yeah.
Not that anybody's gonna watch it, but maybe they will.
I don't know.
I have 33 subscribers.
Oh wow. Well, hey, I should probably make a YouTube channel for my thing.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm going to shut off the recording now. Goodbye, everybody. Thank you for tuning in to the Intolerant Left Radio, the Intolerant Left podcast, even, on Norse Code Radio. I'll cut that in post. It's fine. I'm going to go get a burger. What are you going to do with your day, Ben?
I'm going to be Norsing up all day long.
Norsing up all day long. And to play us out, we have Defiance, Ohio with Oh Susquehanna. I don't remember. I don't know how to pronounce that.
I don't either. What's it?
Okay. Okay.
No.
All right. Whatever. It's a good song. Let's listen to it. Bye-bye.